Well, hello everyone, my name is zwiggojr and welcome back to another video. Today I will be jumping into one of the GameCube games, Pokemon Colosseum. And the main gimmick of this game is Shadow Pokemon, as most of you probably already know. But for those who don't know what Shadow Pokemon actually are, let me try to explain it real quick. Shadow Pokemon are Pokemon that have had their hearts closed off. So they cannot gain any experience or can't learn any new moves or level up like normal Pokemon. But what they do have in this game is a move called Shadow Rush. It's a typeless move that is 90 base power and every single Shadow Pokemon has it. 90 base power doesn't sound so bad, but it does give you some recoil damage. But there is a way for Shadow Pokemon to learn other moves as well, and that is by draining their heart cage. And how do you actually drain this? Well, you can just throw out your Pokemon into battle and that will lower it just a little bit. You can also run around, which also does drain it, but it doesn't go as fast. But the best way to do this is by letting a Pokemon go into hyper mode and then calling it, which is a new feature in this game. If you call your Pokemon, the cage will also drain a little bit. But how do Pokemon enter hyper mode? Well, there is a slight chance of it happening when you use Shadow Rush, so if you just keep on using Shadow Rush, you should go into hyper mode eventually. But why is this challenge going to be hard? Well, Pokemon Colosseum in itself is not an easy game at all. The level jump up in the late game is like super high. And since the only Pokemon that we will be using are Shadow Pokemon, that means that we won't be gaining any experience, so we are stuck with the base levels of those Shadow Pokemon. And we also cannot improve their movesets whatsoever. And on top of that, we are of course also not going to be using any items in battle. And with that out of the way, don't forget to smash that like button. Let's try to aim for 7,000 likes because I put so much work and time into this video. Pokemon Colosseum is a very slow game. And while you're down there, you might as well subscribe as well. And with that out of the way, let's jump right into Pokemon Colosseum with only Shadow Pokemon. I decided to give myself the best nickname possible. I am so innovative. Look at me. After giving ourselves our name, we blow up the Team Snag'em hideout, because our main character here was actually part of Team Snag'em, but he left them and stole their snag machine, and the snag machine is a machine that lets you steal Pokemon from other trainers. And that's how we will be acquiring our Shadow Pokemon. After driving through the desert on our motorcycle, we find Folly and Truly, which are basically the goons of one of the evil bosses in this team, and they're pretty damn stupid. We then make our way to Phoenix City, and we see that they're trying to kidnap someone. At this point into the game, you can't get any Shadow Pokemon yet though, so I'll have to beat them up with my Espeon and Umbreon, which was very easy because I'm pretty sure you can't even lose these fights. After beating them, we freed a girl from a bag, and she will be our shadow detector because normal people can't see Shadow Pokemon, but she can. So she will be our little companion on this journey. We didn't have to go to the mayor's house to explain everything to him, but we see that a very large man or female, I don't know, greets us and then walks away saying that we might see him again in the future. Foreshadowing. I then go and talk to the mayor and explain everything about the Shadow Pokemon, and he says that he's going to investigate it, and we then are off to the stadium to fight some Team Snag'em goons. Of course, since we don't have any Shadow Pokemon yet and we're still stuck with Espeon and Umbreon, this was again very easy.
Ah, look at the top of his head!
After scaring them away, it's time for us to get our first set of Pokeballs. After that, we do return to Phoenix City, and we go back to the mayor's house, but this time, it's invaded by Mr. Mirror B. The best Pokemon villain in any game. Prove me wrong. It's basically a Just Dance character placed into Pokemon and made evil. Mirror B is one of the admins of Team Cypher, who are the people that make the Shadow Pokemon, but he doesn't have time to waste on goons like us, so he sends his two dum-dums, Folly and Truly, after us to battle us. And this time, he gave them a Shadow Pokemon, which is Makuhita. And this will be our first capture, which was pretty easy. I just captured it in a single Pokeball. After that, Truly and Folly skirl away in defeat. We go to the Pokemon Center to deposit our Espeon and Umbreon, and after this you get the choice between Quilava, Bayleaf, and Croconaw to capture as your second Shadow Pokemon. Basically like a starter choice. I decided to go with my favorite Croconaw, but the only reason why I went with Croconaw is because as his final move, he can learn Surf, which will hit both of the opposing Pokemon, which is going to be very nice to have. After adding Croconaw to the team, we can move on to the next town, which is Pyrite Town. And as the name suggests, this is a town full of thugs. As you enter, we see a conversation between Kale, a thug, and a police officer. This Gale guy actually has a Shadow Pokemon himself, so we're going to capture that from him. And guess who it is? It's our boy, Mr. Walk. So after stealing his Furret, he explains how he got the Shadow Pokemon. So basically there's a Colosseum in this town, and if you win the tournament inside it, you get a Shadow Pokemon from Mirror B. We then cut to a scene between Nuskur, which is one of the masters of Team Cypher, and Mirror B talking about giving away the Shadow Pokemon. And we can't let that happen, so we go around town to challenge all of the people that have won the Colosseum in order to steal their Shadow Pokemon. That way we got ourselves a Misdreavus, a Quagsire, a Skiploom, also a Noctowl, a Fluffy, and a Sugma. After capturing all of these Shadow Pokemon, we go to the leader of this town, and his name is Juking. You see that he's kind of having an argument with another guy named Silva. After the argument, Silva storms out, and we find out that he has stolen one of the machine parts of the main power source of the Colosseum. So now the Colosseum can't run anymore, and we have to go and of course save the day. So we retrieve the machine part, and then Juking comes along and he explains why the Shadow Pokemon are being given out. It's because Team Cypher has stolen his precious little Plusle, and his hands are tied because they told him that they will do horrendous stuff to the Plusle if he doesn't cooperate. The only way for us to find out where his Plusle is by challenging the Colosseum ourselves and winning it. So that's exactly what we do. Easiest Colosseum battles ever. After we are declared the winner, we get approached by a Team Cypher grunt, and he brings us inside of their hideout. Inside, they find out that we're actually a spy and that we're here to steal all of their Shadow Pokemon. So after stealing this guy's Yanma, they decide to scram because we're way too strong. And then our boy Juking comes along. He's of course telling us to once again steal the Plusle back and make sure that nothing happens to it. So after making our way through the hideout, we see that at the top of the hideout, Silva is being held captive by two admins of Team Cypher. He was actually trying to stop them, but he is too weak of a trainer to even do anything about it. So we FBI open up. FBI open up! And make sure that they leave this man alone. So we make sure that we beat up all of our Pokemon and capture her Remoraid, and then the second admin attacks us as well, but this team is a little bit more bulky than the last one. But I still made sure to just capture her Mantine after I paralyzed it with an easy Great Ball. I then sadly enough had to beat up her Furret with my Skiploom's Shadow Rush, and after winning we made sure that Silva is safe. We explained to him why we're here, and then Mirror B comes up on the screen and he's just dancing. This man showed me all the moves that I use in the club. He tells us to come to the cave to try and rescue Plusle, but this cave is very deep underground, and before we can actually reach him, there are a couple more Shadow Pokemon that we can capture. So I grabbed myself a Quillfish, which is going to be very important because it's one of the strongest Pokemon that you can get at this point in the game. I then also had the chance to get a Meditite, but I sadly enough killed it with my Croconaw Surf. Not like I was going to use it anyway. So yeah, rip Meditite. I then also got a Dunsparce and a Swablu. And eventually we did reach the end of the cave, where we find Mirror B with his 4 signature Pokemon Ludicolo's. This man puts respect on the Ludicolo name, because they all dance together. But sadly enough, we have to interrupt this dance session and beat him up. So of course the man starts off the battle with none other than 2 Ludicolos. And I lead off with Quillfish and with Furret. My Quillfish can easily one-shot one of the Ludicolos because of a critical hit Shadow Rush, and if you're in Hyper mode, your Shadow Rush actually has a very high crit chance. But when you're in this Hyper mode, your other moves, so like Surf or whatever, they basically won't ever hit. So you're better off just calling your Pokemon or just using Shadow Rush. My Furret is also able to hit a Shadow Rush on the other Ludicolo, and then he sets up a Rain Dance. Next turn, my Qwilfish can kill another Ludicolo with Shadow Rush, and my Furret does some decent damage with Strength. The Ludicolo decides to go for Water Gun on my Qwilfish because he's big brain, and the turn after, my Qwilfish and Furret take out another Ludicolo. Now, the last Pokemon he's going to send out is his Shadow Pokemon, Sudowoodo. But before we try and capture it, I decide to take out the Ludicolo. I then damage the Sudowoodo a little bit with Shadow Rushes from Qwilfish, and eventually I do capture him. That defeats Mirror B, and after the battle, he then tells us that he wants to kick my ass with his elegant dance steps. Man, if one man can kick my ass, it's definitely Mirror B. Then Naruto runs away, and we go ahead and save Plusle. And Juking doesn't even take the Plusle, he gives this to us. Thank you for this useless gift that I'm never going to use. Then we can finally travel to the next city, which is Agate Village. And this village is famous for his big tree. There is one tree on the island and it's very big and someone lives in it. Amazing, right? And guess who lives in the tree? It's the grandfather of our companion. So we pay him a little visit, but as we're there, we hear some bad news. Team Cypher is attacking once again. This time they're attacking the Relic Forest, and in the Relic Forest you can basically purify your shadow Pokemon to make them into normal Pokemon again. But we're not gonna be using that, of course. And as we finally make our way to the Relic Stone, we see that this old man is trying to fight Team Cypher, and his Pikachu uses Quick Attack on a Hitmontop. I mean, this is just very good strategy. This is how you should play Pokemon. Just use Quick Attack. That's it. So after this Pikachu loses to Hitmontop, it's time for us to take on Admin Scrub. His name is literally Scrub. God, do I love me some Pokemon Colosseum names. So anyway, we capture his Hitmontop very easily because we managed to poison it. And after capturing him, we easily defeat the rest of his Pokemon as well. After defeating him, he talks about that Celebi can purify the shadow Pokemon, and that's why this stone is so important. And he also tells us that we're going to have to go to Mount Battle to beat up the next admin. So we grab our bike and drive to Mount Battle. And Mount Battle is literally what it says that it is. You have to battle your way through a couple of trainers, and then at the end of the trainers there is a boss kind of character. So after I defeated 9 trainers in Mount Battle, I finally reached the Cypher admin, Dakim. And this man looks totally normal, definitely not on something. And he's so strong that he punches this guy and he actually does a backflip. He then notices us and he's like, alright, I'll take you on in a battle. But he could literally knock me out here if he wanted to. But his team is actually quite easy to take down because he has a Golem and a Camerupt, and I have a Surfing Crocodile that can take most of them out very easily. But his shadow Pokemon is special. It's actually a legendary Pokemon, Entei. But I'm 100% sure that its catch rate was lowered because this thing was way too easy to catch. So after snagging his Entei, some of his goons come along, and one of those is of course Scrub. They talk about the secret lab and how there are even more and stronger shadow Pokemon that are being made right now. But sadly enough, we don't know where this lab is yet, and Dakim leaves. We then go ahead and take a look at the guy that he got a clean knockout on, but he seems to be fine. The reason why Dakim was here is because this guy has the Time Flute to summon Celebi, and he wanted to steal it. So after that, he gives us the Time Flute to protect it. We then move on with our journey and go back to Pyrite Town to get ourselves a key of the underground facility where Team Cypher is also operating. So we go to the underground and we immediately see a TV playing a video about another Cypher admin telling the people that live here that there is a spy among them. I wonder who that could be. Maybe the guy that's not wearing ordinary clothes. But hey, that's just a theory. So what we have to do here is pick up a part for Net, which runs a company that's basically a Hacker Man company, but for children. So we delivered the part, and apparently the Team Cypher guys are using some kind of signal so that this kid can't use his Hacker Man stuff anymore. So of course, as the hero, we have to stop this signal so that they can do their Hacker Man stuff and try to hack into the Cypher headquarters. But before we do that, we see that Silva is once again being captured by Team Cypher. This guy really isn't having a good day. So we go ahead and take on the Grunts and steal their Ledian, which is going to be useless. We then talk to Silva and he hands us another key item which we're going to use to get to the Cypher admin. Her name is Venus, by the way, and she is leading this TV station shenanigans, where the signal is coming from. So of course, she's naturally going to challenge us to a battle. And this is where the difficulty gets bumped up a little bit, because I had to redo this fight about 20 times, and Colosseum doesn't run fast, so it took me a couple of hours. The main reason why her team is super hard to beat is because of her Pokemon Steelix with Earthquake. It demolishes everything in its way, and I can't get a dent into it. Besides that, she also has a Shadow Suicune, which we have to capture, and this thing knows Surf, which also hits all of the Pokemon and does, once again, a lot of damage. It also doesn't help that all of her Pokemon are way higher level than mine, and that my best Pokemon is Entei, which gets destroyed by the Earthquake and the Surf from earlier. But eventually, I was able to snag the Suicune, which is going to make this fight a lot easier. After capturing Suicune and then losing, I went back once more to try and take her on. I decide to lead with Suicune and Entei, and she leads off with Steelix and Delcatty. I double up on the Delcatty, it doesn't quite kill, but the Delcatty goes for double edge, and the recall damage kills it. Next turn, she sends out her Vileplume, I do some decent damage on it with some Shadow Rushes, but then the Steelix goes for Earthquake, which takes down my Entei, and my Suicune also gets hit by a pretty hard-hitting Giga Drain. So I then decide to send out my Hitmontop, and my Suicune hits a critical hit Shadow Rush on the Vileplume to take it out. The next Pokemon she sends out is a Banette, which takes down my Suicune with Shadow Ball, so I switch in Ledian. The Steelix goes for another Earthquake, but because my Hitmontop has Intimidate, it now does less damage, and my Ledian doesn't even get hit, and he also does some decent damage on his own Pokemon, Banette. I then double up with Shadow Rushes on the Banette to take it out. That only leaves Steelix, so I just keep on Shadow Rushing it until it eventually faints, and just like that, we defeated Venus. After the battle, she flees to the lab, and we have the opportunity to capture some more Shadow Pokemon in Gligar, Stantler, which is going to be very useful because it has the move Hypnosis, so I can put opponents to sleep. And then I also get a Piloswine and a Sneasel. After that, I take the subway, some door explodes. I also pick up a key, which makes me able to enter the lab where all of the experiments are going on. So I grab my motorcycle, head on over to the lab, and wreak havoc among the Cypher community. And how do we do that? Of course, by snatching all their Shadow Pokemon. So I get myself an 8-bomb. This girl almost jumped on my head, so I stole her fortress. I also captured a Gramble, which will be a decent enough team member as well. And finally a Vibrava, which I won't use because Vibrava is trashed if you can't evolve it into Flygon. I then do some puzzles without having to look anything up. I just clicked randomly and opened it. And then I reached the bottom of the lab where we meet up with another Cypher admin. His name is Ein, which means one in German. And his Shadow Pokemon is the final legendary beast, Raikou. And to be completely honest with you, his team destroyed mine a bunch of times once again because my Pokemon just aren't the appropriate level for this point in the game. And from here on out, it's only going to get worse. Anyway, so after getting destroyed by his Golbat, Huntail, and Lantern a couple of times, I eventually did manage to capture his Raikou. And in that same battle, I also managed to defeat his last Pokemon, Altaria, and grab the win here because I had more than enough Pokemon remaining. After the battle, he tells us that all the Shadow Pokemon in the lab have already been transported to a different location and that he also created an ultimate Shadow Pokemon for the boss. So we're gonna have to try and take the boss down, of course. But before we do that, we have to go to the Relic Tower. I probably butchered that name, so get ready to comment. And this is basically an entire area of fighting bosses. That's it, that's all you do here. Fight all of the admins and basically lose 100 times against each and every one of them. But this time they don't have any Shadow Pokemon at all, so you can just take on their teams to try and shred through them without having to take a Shadow Pokemon into consideration. So the first one that I decided to take on was Dakim. And he's basically running an Earthquake kind of team where he just uses Claydol to levitate so that the other Pokemon can use Earthquake. And as you may know, my team isn't really built to deal with that kind of shenanigans. I mean, I have a Raikou and an Entei on my team, so this is not looking too great for me. Besides that, he does also have a Flygon and a Houndoom. And both of them have flamethrowers, so that's also not good for the fortress that I'm using. But after like 25 attempts, I was finally able to beat Dakim. So he starts off with Claydol and Fortress, and I decide to lead with Stantler and Entei. First thing that I do is put the Claydol to sleep, and I try to Fire Blast the Fortress, but sadly enough he has a Protect Up. So after that I Shadow Rush the Claydol and I Fire Blast the Fortress to take it down in a single hit. The next Pokemon he sends out is Whiscash, and I immediately Hypnosis that thing as well, and then I proceed to Shadow Rush the Whiscash with my Entei. I then try to Fire Blast the Claydol, but I miss and the Claydol wakes up and Earthquakes me. I also try to use Hypnosis, but my Stantler goes into reverse mode, and after that my Entei misses another Fire Blast and the Claydol goes for another Earthquake, which takes down my Stantler. So I decide to go into Gramble to lower the attack of the Claydol and the Whiscash, but then my Entei hits a critical hit Fire Blast, which takes down the Claydol. And my Gramble hits a Shadow Rush on the Whiscash, taking it out. Now Dakim is down to his last two Pokemon, Houndoom and Flygon. So the Houndoom goes for a Fire Blast on my Gramble, but I survive. My Entei hits a critical hit Shadow Rush on the Houndoom to take it out in one shot, and my Gramble also hits a Shadow Rush critical hit on Flygon, which leaves it with a sliver of health. The Flygon then takes out my Entei, but it's too late because Gramble comes in and sweeps Flygon off his feet, and we have defeated Dakim as the first admin. Now the second admin I took on was a Mirror B. Mirror B leads off with Golduck and Ludicolo. And on my first turn I couldn't even attack because both of my Pokemon entered Hyper Mode, which means that I can't attack because the turn that they go into Hyper Mode, they can't move. And the turn after, my Hitmontop is already way too weak and gets taken out by Psychic. So I then send in Fortress and my Suicune is able to hit one Shadow Rush on the Ludicolo. I then Shadow Rush the Golduck, I get a critical hit, and I protect with Fortress while the Golduck goes for Surf. The turn after, I double up on Golduck to take it out with two Shadow Rushes. He then sends out another Ludicolo. I decide to hit it with a Shadow Rush as I protect with my Fortress, which does about half of his health. The next turn he uses Dive, so I'm forced to use Shadow Rush on the different Ludicolo this time. And sadly enough, my Fortress gets taken down by a waterfall. So I then send in Gramble, and the next turn I take out one of the Ludicolos with Suicune Shadow Rush. The other Ludicolo goes for Giga Drain, which sadly enough takes down my Suicune, and he also sends in a Loudred. I then send in Stantler to try and go for the Hypnosis, but I miss and get hit with a takedown from Loudred, but my Gramble hits a Shadow Rush, which finally takes out the second Ludicolo. Now the final Pokemon that he sends out is a Armaldo, which I immediately put to sleep with Hypnosis. The Loudred hits my Stantler with another takedown, but Gramble takes him out after that with another Shadow Rush. Now with his last Pokemon being Armaldo, I just Shadow Rush him a bunch of times until that thing faints as well, and I have now won my second admin battle. After that I run into some grunts and snatch their Shadow Delibird, and then I reach the next admin, Venus. She was definitely the easiest of the bunch because I beat her on my first attempt. So she leads off with a Raichu and a Blossom, and I lead with Entei and Stantler. So I go ahead and put the Raichu to sleep with Hypnosis and hit the Blossom with a Fire Blast. Entei did also get paralyzed, which is pretty annoying. The Blossom then hits two Giga Drains on my Stantler to sadly enough take it out, but I then send in Gramble and my Entei takes care of Blossom with another Fire Blast. After that, she sends out Misdreavus, and then the Raichu paralyzes me with Sweet Kiss, and my Gramble kills a Misdreavus in one shot with a Shadow Rush critical hit. She then sends out a Wigglytuff, as my Entei gets stuck in paralysis. The Wigglytuff hits my Entei with a Body Slam, but my Gramble comes in with the Shadow Rush, killing the Raichu in one shot. Now she sends out her last Pokemon, Milotic, and I was pretty scared of this thing because it's pretty damn bulky. My Entei hits a Fire Blast on Wigglytuff, which does about half of its health, and the turn after I get hit with a Surf, which takes down my Entei, so I send in Suicune and get hit immediately by a Body Slam from Wigglytuff. Luckily my Gramble hits another Shadow Rush, taking down Wigglytuff. The Milotic then confuses me with Confuse Ray, and my Gramble hits itself. And my Suicune goes into Hyper Mode. Now the turn after that, the Milotic goes for Surf again, taking down my Gramble. So I go into Hitmontop, and together with my Suicune, they both Shadow Rush the Milotic until it faints. After defeating her, it is now time for the final admin of this portion, and that is Ein. He was by far the hardest of the four admins, and the main reason was because I just needed a lot more moves on my team. I couldn't just run Shadow Rush against him because he had a Rhydon that could stall me out with Toxic and Protect. He He could survive 6 Shadow Rushes and basically stall out my entire team. And besides that, he also has a Crobat, which is very annoying, a Manectric, which does a lot of damage with Thunder in the rain, a Starmie, which does colossal damage with a Rain Dance boosted Hydro Pump, and it once again does not help that my Raikou doesn't have Thunder to take it out. And if the Rhydon or the Manectric is on the field together with the Crobat or with the Starmie, I hit them because they have the Lightning Rod ability. So what I did is I went to Mount Battle to go ahead and get my heart bars drained so that my Suicune and my Raikou would learn the moves Surf and Thunder. This took me about 2 hours to do because the heart drains very slowly on these Pokemon. But after doing that, I went back to Ein. The battle starts off amazing because my Fortress gets killed by a Thunder from a Manectric and my Raikou goes into Hyper Mode immediately. But after that, I send in Gramble and my Raikou hits a critical hit Shadow Rush on Manectric. The turn after that, the Manectric goes for Thunder, which takes down my Gramble, so I send in Stantler. And my Raikou finally hits a Shadow Rush, which takes down Manectric. He then sends in his Starmie, and it goes for Rain Dance, and I try to go with Thunder on Raikou, but he ignores my orders and gets back in his ball, so I have to send in Suicune. But my Stantler was able to get an Hypnosis off on the Starmie. The turn after that, my Suicune goes into reverse mode. My Stantler gets poisoned by Toxic from the Crobat, and I hit a Shadow Rush on the Starmie. And my Suicune also hits a critical hit Shadow Rush on Starmie, which almost takes it down. The turn after that, I get hit with a Bite from Crobat, but my takedown finally finishes off Starmie. And Ein sends in his Pelipper, which immediately gets hit by a Shadow Rush from Suicune. The turn after, my Stantler gets taken out by Crobat, and I send in Raikou. My Suicune hits one more Shadow Rush on Pelipper as well. And the turn after that, my Raikou finally takes down Pelipper with another Shadow Rush. And now his final Pokemon is Crobat, which like all of the other battles gets Shadow Rushed into oblivion. And I forgot to mention this, but I also killed his Rhydon at the beginning of the battle with a single Surf. After that battle, I run into another Cypher Grunt, which had a Shadow Heracross, which I captured, since this thing will be quite useful on the team. We then go to the top of Relgame Tower where we find Naskur. He tells us that he will go upstairs with the elevator and want a battle with us over there. But as we try to take the elevator, Gonzap comes out of the elevator, which is the leader from Team Snag'em, you know, the one that we were part of and we blow up their hideout. And he isn't too happy about that. He's been hitting the gym and is ready to whoop my ass. And this is also the moment where the game totally turns on you. There is only 3 more admin battles, this one included, from here on out to finish the game. And this part alone took me 8 hours to record. 8 hours for 3 battles. Like, that's literally insane. But I really wanted to get this video out to you this week. So I kept on pushing through, kept on switching my team around, kept on trying to beat Gonzap and his stupid Pokemon. But Gonzap is the least of my troubles, but let's just get right into the battle with him. The reason why Gonzap is hard is because his Pokemon are level 53. And my highest level Pokemon at this point is a level 45 Heracross, which isn't even that good against him, because most of his team is running Aerial Ace. Besides that, he's also running a Hariyama with Earthquake, which, as you know from previous encounters, is not good for my health. And he also has a Shadow Skarmory, which I really wanted to capture, but in the end, I just ended up taking it down because I just didn't want to stay in the ball. Besides that, he also has a Pinsir with Earthquake and Aerial Ace, so yeah, this was not fun for me to do. But I did it anyway, let's see how. The man starts off with a Crawdaunt and a Hariyama, and I lead off with my Stantler and a Raikou. I go for Thunder on the Crawdaunt, which takes it out in a single hit. He then switches in Pinsir, and my Stantler hits an Hypnosis on the Hariyama. Next turn, my Raikou misses a Thunder, and my Stantler hits another Hypnosis on the Pinsir, which means that both of his Pokemon are now asleep. The turn after that, my Stantler and Raikou both miss their moves, and the Hariyama wakes up, goes for an Earthquake, and does major damage to both of my Pokemon. The turn after that, I go for a Thunder on Pinsir, which does a lot of damage, and my Stantler is also able to put the Hariyama back to sleep. Then I hit a Thunder on the Hariyama, and my Stantler goes into Hyper Mode. The Pinsir then wakes up, goes for an Earthquake, and takes down my Stantler and Raikou. But he also hit his Hariyama pretty hard. So I decide to send in Heracross and Fortress this time. My Fortress gets hit with a Vice Grip, which was very stupid. And my Heracross takes down Hariyama with a Shadow Rush, and he then sends in his Shiftry. And my Fortress goes into hyper mode, so he doesn't do anything this turn. The turn after, the Pinsir goes for Earthquake, and the Shiftry goes for Aerial Ace, taking down my Heracross. So I go into Entei, and my Fortress hits a Shadow Rush, finally taking down Pinsir. He then sends in this last Pokemon, Shadow Skarmory. I then go for Fire Blast with Entei to take down the Shiftry in one hit, and Fortress hit a Shadow Rush on the Skarmory as well. I then give the Skarmory a couple more turns to try and stay in the ball, but it doesn't want to stay in, so in the end I just end up taking it out. So now it is time for basically the Elite Four of this game. It's a series of 4 battles where you cannot heal in between, and you have to beat every single one of those trainers in order to get to the final battle against Nazgûr. Luckily, there are still a couple of Shadow Pokemon available to us, so we aren't stuck with the team that we have right now. So I capture myself a Miltank, which will be very bulky, and it also has access to Body Slam to paralyze opponents. I also get an Absol, which was not really worth it because this Absol isn't really that good, despite it does have Sword Stance. I also snatch myself a Houndoom, which is probably the best team member out of the 3, because he has access to Flamethrower, which is an important move for later on. So after capturing these Pokemon, I decide to go back to Mount Battle to, of course, call them a couple of times and drain their hard bar. This once again took me a couple of hours before I could get back to the final few battles. So after defeating the 4 final battles, I finally stand face to face with Nazgûr. And this man has a very decent team as he starts off with Gardevoir and Dusclops. And I decide to lead off with Heracross and Miltank. I decide to go for the Body Slam Shadow Rush combo on Gardevoir, and I managed to paralyze it. My Heracross did get confused by the Dusclops, but the turn after, Nazgûr decides to waste an X-Special attack on both of his Pokemon, and even though my Heracross hit itself in its confusion, my Miltank was able to Body Slam the Gardevoir to death. Nazgûr then sent out his/her Blaziken, who of course one-shots my Heracross with Blaze Kick. So I send out my Suicune and he immediately gets hit by a Psychic from Dusclops. My Miltank is able to hit Body Slam on the Blaziken though and do okay damage. The turn after that, the Blaziken confuses my Miltank and I hit a Surf with my Suicune, taking Blaziken into very low health, but then my Miltank hit itself, sadly enough. And the turn after that, my Miltank gets taken out by a Sky Uppercut from Blaziken. So I send in my Absol and my Suicune goes for a Surf, which takes down Blaziken. Nazgûr then sends out Walrein and the Dusclops goes for Psychic on my Absol, but that doesn't work. So next turn I set up a Sword Stance with my Absol, but I do get hit by an Ice Beam from Walrein, and Suicune hits a Shadow Rush on Walrein as well. And Suicune also gets confused by Dusclops. So the turn after that, I hit a Shadow Rush on the Walrein, doing more than half of his health, but an Ice Beam takes down my Absol. So I go into Raikou, my Suicune gets hit by a Psychic from Dusclops, but he manages to hang on. So I go for Thunder on the Walrein, and it finally goes down. Xatu comes out next, and Dusclops takes down Suicune with Psychic. So I send in Houndoom, go for the Flamethrower on Xatu, get a critical hit, and it goes down. So now Nazgûr sends out his final Pokemon, Shadow Metagross. But I get super lucky because Raikou hits it immediately with a Thunder and paralyzes it. Next turn, I decide to go for Flamethrower on Dusclops, and my Raikou hits itself in its confusion. Luckily, the Dusclops goes for Shadow Ball and the Metagross goes for Iron Defense, so none of my Pokemon go down this turn. Next turn, I go for another Flamethrower on the Dusclops, taking it down. And my Raikou hits another Thunder on Metagross, getting it down into red health, so now I just throw my ball at it and capture it rather easily. And just like that, we have defeated Nazgûr, and that's the game completed, right? I mean, Mr. Mayor himself is over here to give us a prize or something, but no, Mr. Mayor was the brain behind Cypher after all. And he immediately attacks us with his godlike team of level 60 plus Pokemon. You heard me right, level 60 plus, while my highest level Pokemon is a level 50 Metagross. Do you see the problem here? Let me just go over how ridiculously hard his team is. He has a Machamp, a Salamence, a Slacking and a Slowking with skill swap so that the Slacking doesn't have Truant anymore. He also has a Scizor, and finally has his Shadow Pokemon, he has a Tyranitar, which in my case he never sends out. he always leaves it as his last Pokemon so that I can't capture it. This fight alone took me 5 hours of preparing and resetting until I finally managed to get the better of him. So the first thing I actually had to do was get my Metagross's heart cage down by a lot because I needed him to learn Psychic to take out Machamp more easily. And after a couple of hours in Mount Battle, I was finally ready to take on Mr. Mayor. I lead off this battle with Metagross and Gramble, and he leads off with Slowking and Machamp. So I go for Psychic on the Machamp and I switch out my Gramble for Heracross, predicting a Cross Chop. I predicted right and he critted me and Heracross is still going down. I then go for Flamethrower on the Machamp, which takes it out, and he then sends in his Slacking as he also wasted his turn by going for X attacks. My Metagross then sets up a Iron Defense to take those Earthquakes just a little bit better. I then switch out Houndoom for Gramble to get another Intimidate off on the Slacking, as he goes for an Earthquake and deals some very decent damage to my Gramble, but my Metagross is taking it quite well. So I decide to set up another Iron Defense with Metagross. And then the Slowking goes for a Skill Swap, which does mean that he now has Truant. The Slaking is able to hit a Crush Claw on my Gramble, which takes it out, and my Metagross also hits a Psychic on the Slacking after I swapped in Miltank. And I got double lucky because the Psychic was actually a critical hit, which did about half of Slacking's health. Next turn, Slacking misses his Crush Claw, so I'm able to hit it with a Psychic and a Body Slam to take it down. Salamence then comes out and Slowking goes for Psychic on Miltank, but I tanked that. The Salamence decides to take out my Miltank with a Double Edge, so I switch in Houndoom and my Metagross is able to hit a Psychic on the Salamence as well. And I get a special defense drop, which is crucial. Next turn, I switch out Houndoom for Raikou, predicting a Double Edge, and the Raikou lives on 1 HP, and then my Metagross is able to take down the Salamence with a Psychic because of the recoil damage from Double Edge. Sadly enough, the Slowking then hits a Water Pulse, which takes down my Raikou. He then sends in a Scizor, and I send in my Houndoom, go for the Flamethrower, and take down Scizor immediately. He then sends out his last Pokemon, Shadow Tyranitar, and my Metagross hits another Shadow Rush on Slowking. I then just lob my Master Ball at the Tyranitar to capture it, and my Metagross isn't able to hit a Shadow Rush because he goes into Hyper Mode. And the Slowking also takes down my Houndoom with a Water Pulse. So now it comes down to both of our last Pokemon, Metagross versus Slowking, but I hit a Shadow Rush, taking down Slowking and beating Pokemon Colosseum with only Shadow Pokemon. In my opinion, this game is one of the best games ever made combined with Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. And I would love another spin-off of this series, but I don't think it's gonna happen. But this challenge in particular though was very hard to complete. But I think if I did this in Pokemon XD, it would be way easier because the shadow system has been totally reworked in that game. Anyway, the total amount of hours that it actually took me to complete this challenge was over 16, so I really do hope that you guys enjoyed this video. And if you would like to see more Colosseum and XD challenges, leave it in the comments down below so that I can do more of them because I really do enjoy these games. Besides that, I also want to thank the Patreon and membership supporters as always. Thank you so much for making me able to buy bread. If you want to sign up yourself, the link is in the description. And with that out of the way, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm zwiggojr, and I'll see you guys next time.